Cool. So thanks everyone for joining in today for our Teaching for Impact lecture series, VCE lecture series. And today we're going to be talking about argument analysis. So as we all know, this is section C and it is quite unpredictable. But I like to think of it as like the more analytical side of things. Like if it was on a spectrum, if the essays were on a spectrum, this would probably be the more analytical side of things. So we'll get started, and the outline will be today that we go through we go through some of the techniques, and we also go through the purpose and also some sample arguments, some sample introductions as well. So before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the people of the Kulin Nations on whose land I and we are gathered in today, and I pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. So just a bit about me. I'm a current English tutor. I'm also studying med, and the outline is here today. And I guess the main takeaway today, would be try and find a balance between your macroscopic and the microscopic level of analysis. And oftentimes we often tend to think about the PLTs and the PLTs and the PLTs, and it's all about that like nitty gritty stuff. But a good analysis will incorporate a balance of the macro in terms of like the author's purpose, the main arguments, the issues, and the relationship with the audience, which is really key. So let's jump on to the PLTs. And what follows is a number of specific PLTs and appeals that are like quite extensive, but they're not limited to this. So these are just some key techniques that I think are very common. But of course, if you can find some other techniques and interpret those, the more subtle, the less obvious, the better. So we'll talk about, for example, the appeal to authority. So an example sentence would be like, Professor X's extensive research clearly proves something, and we analyze the intended effect of this, specifically to provide the reassurance that the writer's viewpoint is shared by someone with expert knowledge. And an appeal is appeal to common sense. For example, a ban is the only sensible response to. And the intended effect of this is to pressure the reader to agree by implying that anyone who disagrees lacks a sense of practical reasoning. Okay. Furthermore, appeals to fear and insecurity. For example, if we don't act now, we will be in mortal danger. And the intended effect of this appeal is to warn the reader that taking action is necessary to avoid harms and to maintain, or it's to help maintain that sense of security. And the appeal to tradition and customs. For example, dressed in our green and gold, clad in sunscreen, ready with our loudest chanting voices, we made the annual journey to the G. And in this sentence, I'm really trying to get at images of like Australian traditions, with the intention of encouraging the reader to resist any specific changes to our traditions, and to feel that our links to the past should be retained. Oh, sorry, I have just seen this question from Devanshi. Yes, you will be getting these slides later. I will, I'll pop it in the Facebook post at least. And I will also try to, if you stick around at the end, I'll try to get a Google link sent in the Zoom chat as well. So yes, somehow you'll get the slides. Cool. All right, further appeals to family values. Example is government should encourage parents to have the time and resources to care for our young children. And the intended effect of this is to encourage the reader to view the traditional nuclear family as the most stable and most desirable. Further appeals to hip pocket nerve or a sense of financial security. For example, like the sense of like drowning in debt. And the intended effect of this is to position the reader to feel that our own sense of financial well-being is being threatened, and it encourages the reader to reject the view of those who want to raise prices and taxes. Okay. And some of the key techniques are attacks that essentially try to belittle a group or individual, make them seem really small or quite unreasonable. So, for example, we're talking about the sorry state of the Murray River is due to a century of dysfunctional management, and the intended effect of this statement is to make us think poorly of I guess the managing group of the Murray River. And other key techniques is inclusive language and rhetorical question. Now we see a lot of this. It's very easy to identify when we look at a paragraph, but it's not commonly analysed well, as in we find that students tend to like talk about vague brushstrokes level, but what's really good if you can analyse like inclusive language, rhetorical question in a more specific way that's closely tied to the author's contention. And also never try to miss analysing the cartoon or image. And some of the common like meta language that you can use to describe cartoons are talking about puns, exaggeration, irony, personal attack, and the creation of a caricature. All right, so that was the PLT side of things. And now we're talking about, I guess, the broader level of analysis, the macroscopic. So we're talking about the purpose of the author at the level of like the relationship of the author with the reader. So here's a bit of an approach to thinking about purpose, because it's often quite subtle, and we have to really look for hints to help us to figure out what is the author's purpose. So some ways that you can do this is you can firstly consider the role. So in the background information, that little box at the front of section C, there might be an existing like role of the author that says like this author is the CEO of a company, for example. And then secondly, you can consider the context of this. So whether it is happening in a conference, whether it's at an award ceremony, or if it's just published in a newspaper article for the local community to read, or like a broader community. And then we have to consider who is the target audience. And then essentially these all kind of feed into what we describe as like the relationship between the author and the audience. So to give you a bit of an example of this, an example might be you have the CEO of a company who's the author, and that is given in the background information. And they are speaking at a conference or a award ceremony. The CEO of a company, they'll have the underlying agenda to promote their company. So you can think that maybe in whatever, I guess, public appearance a CEO is going to make, they may have the underlying intention to push the company's publicity. So we're thinking about from the CEO's perspective, they may see the audience not only as, I guess, just a bunch of faces or like listeners in the crowd, but they more think about like these are potential customers. They're potential, like this is a potential marketing opportunity. So I guess that's a bit of an example of how things influence the relationship between the author and the audience. And essentially, it's important to think about the author's intention because it helps us to inform about their relationship with the audience. For example, the CEO, like a sentence that you could talk about, like a CEO's intention would be perhaps like an attempt to guide the public's perception of the company to feature prominently notions of generosity and benevolence. So that's just, I guess, an example of example sentence of analysing the author's intention. Okay, keep going with this. Also feel free to drop any questions in the chat. Okay, so we've got here a phrases bank to describe the author's purpose. And I really like to have these kind of like banks of phrases, especially in language analysis, because it helps you have a framework, and often you can find that a lot of these phrases can be reused and overused in your essays. So when it comes to just writing it, you already have a lot of like sentences preformed, and it just comes down to like filling in the blanks in the exam. So example sentences are to inspire a sense of like optimism in readers, to remind readers of their responsibility over the environment, for example, to instill / to curry favour with the reader, leaving readers with little option but to support the author's whatever agenda, and to evoke or provoke, to guilt readers into something, to encourage readers to think or feel deeply about something. So Isabel's just asked a question for the exam. Will it be a comparative language analysis or just one article? To be honest with you, I'm not entirely up to date with the current VCA regulations. Karen just answered just one. Yeah, I think I can't personally answer it because I'm not well informed enough about this. In the past, there's been a variety of things. But yeah, if anyone else can help out with this question, that'd be great. Okay. All right, so our next slide is about tone. And I think tone is a major pointer to help us figure out the author's purpose as well. And it's, you see in like really good analysis that they analyze tone in many different stages of the essay, because they acknowledge that the tone changes at various points within an article. So as a ballpark, I guess I would aim for like 3 to 4 tone words per essay. It kind of helps us to inform the author's purpose. So for example, I would describe tone as the author's tone elicits sympathy for their position by using colourful language. The writer establishes a particular tone designed to elicit a particular effect. And then the tone shifts as the writer goes on to demonstrate that. And with, I guess, more complex analysis, it's great if you can show that, okay, I understand where exactly in the essay, where exactly in the article the tone shifts or the tone changes, and how, I guess, the purpose changes with that. Cool. So you can broadly divide up tone words into two categories, like if it's either serious or more comedic. And here are a bunch of tone words for you guys to read. Okay. All right. So we are flying through this, and we are up to talking about how we're constructing the argument now. All right. So I'm talking here about an article that's just like analyzing just one article rather than comparing an article. Because I'm just looking at the chat. Cool. So it seems like you guys have the understanding that you're just comparing one article. Well, you've just got one article to analyze. You don't compare. Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So even if we get two, we don't have to compare. Yeah. Yeah, that's how I would approach it as well. Pretty much if you have two articles, so on your VCAR exam, you have 2 pages. One page is like, I guess, an editorial, and then the next page is like a response to that editorial. I would first write an analysis based on I would just focus on the analysis for the first article, for the editorial first, and then after I've done that, then I would just analyze the next response separately, if that makes sense. But essentially you're just analyzing the arguments of the essays of the articles separately. Sorry, I don't know if I'm making sense. And this is the structure that I would follow. So I'm not sure if you guys have heard of the TEEAL structure. It's kind of like text response, but we've also got the audience as well. So topic sentence, its main thing is to identify the argument, the dominant argument, and I guess also think about the reaction it provokes in the target audience. Like, I guess the main argument, if it's like a sense of concern or if it's like a sense of optimism, for example. And then we go on to explanation. So this is talking about what it is that is being argued, and given the issue and the contention, and it leads us to talking about the evidence. So what PRT is being used to make this point. And essentially this is like your tone words, your appeals, all that meta language that you'll be familiar with. Do we get a copy of this recording? Yes, this recording will be uploaded. Cool. What is the intended effect of on the reader of this particular PRT, given the issue and contention? So this is the key part. This is where your analysis is at. Essentially, we want to talk about like the relationship between the author and the audience. How is the author deliberately trying to make us think or feel? So this is the audience. And we'll see some more examples of this later on. Okay. And then finally, we round off our paragraph with a link back to the author's contention, purpose, or back to the author's contention, purpose, or argument. Okay, so I've just got a question from Gracie in the chat. She's asking about how to analyze the title. Sometimes single words are important. Not sure how to discuss it in my essays analytically. So the first thing that comes to mind when I think of the title is I would think about the tone particularly, and also the title. It should also sometimes like give away the purpose. So what I would do is, like, after figuring out the author's contention and the main purpose, that would help me to, I guess, inform the title, like my discussion of the title. And you typically want to do it like chronologically. So your title analysis will be in the first body paragraph. And try to also link it in with the written body paragraphs as well. So if you can make a connection between, like, I guess, like the tone exhibited in the title and I guess the tone in the, like, paragraphs in the articles, like opening paragraphs, I guess that's one way to analyze the title, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's clear enough. Good question though. Cool. No worries. All right. All right. Here's a sample argument, and I just want you guys to read it for a moment, and then we'll discuss about some of the good things and some things that can be improved here. All right, how is that for time? So I guess it's an opportunity to make this a bit interactive. What would you guys say are some good things about this argument? And you can drop it in the chat or unmute yourself. Oh, cool. So I've got Gracie saying that it's good in identification of techniques. Cool. Anything else? discusses the effect upon readers. Good. Yep, thanks. Doesn't quote drop, kind of smoothly incorporates quotes into writing. Thanks. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's very good for now. So yeah, I would say similarly those things, as well as I guess some highlights for me were the sentence, concern is instilled in on the reader as they are reminded that these princesses pose as role models for young children. All right, so we're talking about the specific effect of concern, and specifically revolves around the issue that there's a negative influence that these toys have for young children. I guess I would also highlight the sentence about painting the positive impression of boys' toys in comparison. Like the student is comparing the effect of boys versus young girls' toys, and therefore, I guess, the influence of the young girls' toys. So this sentence, I guess I would highlight this juxtaposes with the image of the traditional role model for girls, and then talking about this particular kind of quote where sacrifice themselves for the common good. Cool. So my next question for you guys is, what do you think could be improved in this paragraph? Yep. So Karen's saying, could use shorter sentences and more concise sentences. Cool. Anything else? Yeah, cool. So Gracie's saying that discussing them in a bit more detail rather than jumping to many different techniques because it makes it flow more. Yeah, cool. Cool. I like where you guys have been going with all that. And something that I would point out would be making this, I guess, purpose more detailed and more specific. So like, I guess I would delve into, I guess, more of that conceptual stuff surrounding the purpose. So I know we're talking about how it's young allows the reader to decide for themselves the messages portrayed through the toys of different genders, implying that young girls are under a negative influence. But I guess to make it more specific, I would probably say how it's like a cautionary message to young girls' parents about the existing negative social cultural influences on girls, especially given that given the suggestion that young girls' toys promote superficiality and that sense of there's a sense that it's more morally deprived compared to the influence of boys' toys. So do you see how I'm trying to talk more specifically about the purpose, and especially I'm thinking about young girls' parents, because I guess, yeah, they're witnessing their children go through this. It's more, I guess, relevant, it's more cautionary towards them. Okay, I hope that is clear. All right. Yeah, cool. So we're heading towards the tail of this talk, and we're talking about how to bring everything together. So linking, I guess, those big picture kind of concepts, purpose, audience, and linking it with the PLTs. And we're talking about how to structure it all together now. And hopefully by now you guys are quite familiar with how you guys approach the argument analysis, like the whole stepwise process of that. So I've just got here, I guess, an example of a order to approach it. So when we identify the issue first, and then we talk about the contention, and then we divide up, we have an article and divide it up into key arguments. Typically you would just divide it up into 1, 2, 3, and then you would highlight the key PLTs, and think about the PLT's effects on the reader. And then you can create a dot point plan for each paragraph of your analysis, and then write it particularly. So I've just got a question from a student here. How many practice exams did you write for each section before exam? And how many paragraphs and pages did you write for each section? So for your second question, just remembering like the days of writing examinations, and when my handwriting would be just really small and really tight. So I guess I wrote typically, I think, 3 A4 pages for each essay. That being said, it's really about quality rather than quantity. And that was for each section, I believe. How many practice exams did I write for each section before exam? I remember, I think for section C, that was my weakness in year 12. So in my experience, I'm pretty sure I wrote an essay each week since like March. And then leading up to the examination, so that meant that leading up to the examination, I didn't have to write that much. I know you're trying to get an idea of how much revision, how much section C revision you need to do. It's really about where you are at and like your particular weakness areas. So I would really try to cater your revision around your weaknesses, rather than go for like, okay, I'm going to do 10 essays this week. It's more like, I guess, the process, the learning process that comes with your practice writing. I hope that answers your question, and we can discuss it more, I guess, if you would like. Cool. Okay, so going back to this lecture. All right. So we've got the process, and these slides will be given to you in some way. So let's keep going. Oh, we've got a sample intro, another one. Oh, and it's also based on princesses again. So just take a few moments to read this, and then we'll talk about some good things and some improvement points again. All right, how's that for time? Shall we get started on what are some of the good things in this introduction? Yes, great start. We've got discusses the authorial intention. Awesome. Awesome. Has stuff like format, issue, contention, tone, audience. Great. Yep. So in your introduction, we've got like a checklist of things that it's fairly straightforward. You just have to pretty much plug it in for whatever article it is. Awesome. Yes, cool. Good stuff, guys. So yeah, I would say pretty much the same kind of positive points about this. So the main issue, the main contention, the target audience is specific. We're talking about parents of young children's, and particularly to consider their own choices and gender preferences for children. Like I said before, maybe parents of young children, you could say that, and then I guess furthermore, you could say more specifically related to parents of young girls, for example. Cool. someone's just asked, do you have to include each of the 3 arguments for your body paragraphs in the introduction? Okay. Okay, it depends on how you want to go about this. So your contention should be, I guess, complex enough, or like it should be detailed enough so that you kind of encapsulate like a bit of the 3 arguments in the contention. If you want, I guess you can have I guess like more of a signposting structure. It's not super necessary, but you can if you want. The key things in the intro would be related to ticking these boxes. So we're talking about contention and the issue being discussed. So contention, and I guess if it's I guess a complex or like a really detailed contention, then you would have I guess you would talk about like the 3 main arguments, or like it would in some way summarize the main arguments, like the 3 main arguments. But yes, your contention, if it can be as detailed as possible, that's good. Sorry, that was probably a really roundabout way of saying make your contention as, I guess, specific as possible in your introduction. It helps for later on. And I guess if you want a signpost, that is cool. It's, I guess you would only be really concerned with like the interests of time, if you have the time for that. We've got another question. If there's a visual, do you need to address it in the intro? If the visual is written, is like accompanied with that same article, then I would say you don't need to. But if it's like a standalone visual by a cartoonist, like by someone else, then yes, you can, because it's kind of like, it could be a response to your first article, and it could serve as like 2 separate things. But if it's a visual that's like incorporated with the first article, then it's pretty much sharing the same kind of message as that author. So I wouldn't say that you need to like bring up a new visual and talk about the author and their position and their purpose and their contention and all that. And then we've got another question saying, would you suggest analysing the article in the order of the paragraphs or arguments, or would you recommend grouping certain ideas together in each argument? I would basically analyze it chronologically. So you've got an article, you go from top down, but you would, having like read the article a few times, you would kind of group it. You would try to group the like certain paragraphs together, like maybe the first 2 arguments have this similar sort of like main argument. So I would clump that together and analyze that as my first body paragraph. And then going back to the article, you would have a look at the next, okay, 1, 2, 3 argument, 1, 2, 3 paragraphs. They have a similar idea. I would clump that together and analyze that main idea. And then the remainder paragraphs, for my body paragraph 3. So I hope that answers your question. So I don't believe we've finished, oops. I don't think we finished analysing this introduction. So my question is for you guys, what do you think can be improved in this paragraph? I mean, in this introduction? Yes, great. So I've got a student saying, doesn't introduce the context. Yes, I'm similarly wondering that. Where is it published? Is it like a school magazine, or is it The Age or The Guardian? So I guess this tells us a lot, right? Like we know that it's an opinion piece, but like why are we having this discussion? Basically, would be nice to know. What else is needing to be improved? Cool. So we've got students saying maybe they could make the author's purpose more obvious. Yes, great. I would agree. Awesome. So maybe you could say that. So we're talking about how it's like authors. I mean, the author's saying parents. We're getting parents to make better decisions for their children, but I'm wondering if this author maybe has more specific particular suggestions, like what kind of end change do they want to see? So that's how I would kind of make my purpose more specific. Great. So we've got a student saying more specific tonal words. Cool. Great. So there's two tone words, calm and measured. If you can think of some more specific ones, then that's awesome. And we've got a student saying, try including what response the author expects from their audience. Yeah, I guess it would be, yeah, cool. So that's cool. I think you're talking about how like the overall effect on the audience after reading this. That'd be great to talk about, like a sentence for that. It will really, I guess, boost your analysis of that purpose. Cool. All right. Great stuff, guys. Oh, okay. All right, cool. So we've just come back to this introduction checklist. And essentially it's kind of like introduction. It's just about ticking off the boxes, and also most importantly talking about the intended purpose of the author, and what they want the reader to believe. And we have already discussed about how to make the contention as specific as possible. We've talked about making the tone words quite specific as well. And I guess the importance of giving a bit of context to the publishing details, and name, type of article, well, that's pretty self-explanatory. So yes, great. Yep, cool. So I think this is my final slide, and we're just, I guess, going back to the criteria, the assessment criteria from VCA. And this is basically three main things. So section C, we're talking about firstly, we want to see you demonstrate the understanding of the argument presented and the point of view presented. So I've got some key places that really showcase this. So your contention in your introduction, and also your topic sentences in your body paragraphs, your linking sentences, and the purpose, which is woven in everywhere. as much as possible. Secondly, we want to see you demonstrate analysis of the ways in which language and visual features are used to present an argument and to persuade. So just some key places that showcase this. We're talking about the evidence that you choose. Think about the evidence that you choose to put in and the evidence that you choose to put out. This is all talking about like your selection of it and subsequently your explanation of this. And you want to try and sprinkle as much meta language as possible. And it also includes your statements about intended effect on the reader, and also that links to like statements about purpose and contention as well. Cool. So, and then finally, the third one is pretty, I guess, like standard for every essay. Your control and effectiveness of language use as appropriate to the task. And for this, I guess I would just say that it's important that the language, the writing is clear. It would also help if the handwriting is clear, just from experience. So writing is clear rather than having fluffy language, fluffy fancy language everywhere. And if you have like a logical thought or logical structure, then you'll find that your clarity of language and your writing use, your writing will just become clearer naturally. So and we've got a student saying, are adjectives, verbs, nouns considered as meta language? Yes, great. These are all meta language words. Cool. Cool. So that's the bottom end of all my slides. Do you guys have any more questions? If you have any more questions after this, you can feel free to email me, just to like find our Facebook page and message us somehow. I think it's fairly straightforward with the link below actually. And I guess it's also a good opportunity to talk about our lectures in the coming day. So tomorrow we have some more comparative lectures, and it won't just be me taking, it will just be also some other awesome people. So excellent. I might just stop sharing at the moment and then answer some more of these questions. But thank you so much for your attention today, guys, and thanks for your participation as well.